Welcome and thank you very much for being here. And I know that you're all, in one way or another, you're involved in the recovery from Hurricane Irma. I think I'll talk to the applicants first, people who might have been affected by the hurricane. And I just want to go through just the real basic process of how FEMA works, because I think that's confusing to a lot of people sometimes. Once you were registered and it was deemed an application that may need additional assistance, in other words, you didn't just evacuate or you didn't just lose your power, you had actual needs to recover, whether it be rental assistance or home repairs or personal property replacement or things like that, that you get referred to our individual and households program. At that time, an inspector is assigned to go out and meet you at your home. There has to be a family member 18 years or older at the home at the time the inspection is scheduled. Now, if the inspector can't reach you or you miss an appointment, then it's up to you to call the FEMA helpline, the 800-621-3362, to reschedule that inspection, okay? If your home was inaccessible at the time originally and you haven't heard from an inspector, it's up to you to call the helpline and let them know that your home is now accessible. When the inspector comes, they'll try to reach you 3 times and then they'll move on until they hear from you. Okay, and they'll usually try to call you at different times of the day. Now, when they're there, they're going to need some information from you. They're going to look at the home outside, and if you're there and you allow them, they can look inside, and they just write down what they see. All that is, sent through the air to our processing center, and there it works through the system and is determined what they think you would be eligible for. Some of those programs might be rental assistance. Rental assistance will pay for rent. It's based on the fair market value of rent in the area, and it's based on the number of occupied bedrooms in the home that was damaged. So you may be issued rental assistance. If you have a continued need for rental assistance after that initial couple of months or whatever it is that they've given you, then they'll send you a form called a certification for continued rental assistance. And that form can be completed. You can submit the documentation that's required, such as mortgage statements and your new lease and your utility bills and all the things that are required on that, and then you may be eligible for additional assistance up to 18 months. Okay? So that's kind of the rental assistance program. There's also the home repair program. That is money, just what it says it is. It's to help you have money to repair your home and make it safe, sanitary, and functional again. We don't expect FEMA to be able to provide to make your home just like it was before. That's rarely going to happen. There is a maximum amount of $30,300 right now for all the FEMA programs. So anyway, okay. So if the money that you all things combined. Now, if you're staying in a hotel under the FEMA Transitional Sheltering Program assistance, that does not go towards your cap, so that's not money that counts. You can use that repair money for a number of things, and Deidre's handing out a handout that we didn't have enough, I don't think, for everyone, that'll explain some of the different types of things that can be included. The other needs assistance program may also be available, and that's things like personal property, cars, wells, funerals, medical expenses, and things like that. Now, the way FEMA looks at it, everyone is expected to use all of the resources that are available to them, okay? And we consider the Small Business Administration loans a primary resource for anyone who's been affected by a disaster. When you apply to FEMA, they do like any other agency does. They have a line that says, based on the number of people in your home and the amount of income. If you fall above that line, you're automatically referred to the Small Business Administration for a possible loan. If you fall below that line, you're automatically referred to the FEMA grant program. Now, if you're issued an SBA application, it is absolutely essential that you return that application. If you are issued an application and you do not return it, you will not be referred to FEMA grant programs. Okay? If you return your application, then they look at it on assets versus liability, just like any other loan application. At that time, you may be approved or you may not be approved. If you're not approved, you're automatically referred back to the FEMA grant programs for the other needs assistance. If you are approved, then you have access to a whole lot more money for your recovery. SBA loans for individuals can be up to $200,000 for a home, up to $40,000 for personal property. So, and they're at very low interest rates. I'm looking at our SBA person over here. I think the rates right now, if you would not be eligible to qualify for a loan elsewhere, like 1.75%.
It is. It's for homeowners up to 1.75% for terms up to 30 years, and for businesses is 3.305% for terms up to 30 years. And we have extended for IRMA. The first payment is not going to be due for 1 year. So, and of course, they're under no obligation to take the loan should we offer them one. And the first $25,000 is basically a signature loan requirement.
Right. SBA gives, I think last I heard anyway, the majority of the loans they give is actually to individuals after disasters. That's one of the main things that they do. So, and we do have her here, Adrian, here to help you with any questions you might have about that later. Okay. Now there are some assistance programs that are not what we call SBA dependent. Things like funeral, medical, dental, and some other individual items that are specified by the state. So those are automatically referred. Housing, the rental assistance and the housing is not dependent on the SBA because SBA doesn't provide money for rentals. Okay, so we all work together in a very close net to try and be able to provide the best assistance picture that we possibly can. Some of the things to remember on the individual side, and also actually for everybody, I like this information to get out to everybody because the more people who know it's the better. There are 3 things that can stop your assistance processing right from the beginning. 1, you got an SBA application and you didn't return it. That's going to completely stop any other needs assistance until that SBA application's returned. 2, if when you registered you said you had insurance, you must submit to FEMA your insurance proof of loss or letter stating that stating that you don't have insurance that covers that particular need. And 3 is the inspector thing that I talked about. They'll try and reach you 3 times. If they can't reach you or if you miss an appointment, they'll stop trying until you call the helpline to reschedule it. So those are 3 really easy things. And if somebody says, I haven't heard from FEMA and it's been 30 days, ask them those 3 questions and you might very well find out why. Another thing that's real important to understand is you'll all receive letters after you have applied to FEMA. And that's going to tell you you're eligible, you're not eligible, and exactly what for. Okay? Read the letter. Because a lot of people we find will read the first couple of lines, which will say something like, you've been found ineligible for, and they stop reading. If you read the whole letter, it probably says something in there like, we need to have your proof of occupancy. Send a utility bill. We need to prove your ownership. Send whatever it is they need there. So it'll tell you in that letter what it is that you're lacking in order for that application to proceed. That one's pretty easy, and that's really important. Please don't be waiting to clean up. Take pictures so that you've got documentation of your home and any belongings that go out to the curb and things like that. So you have that documentation. Don't wait. The mold is just going to get worse and worse and worse as time goes on. Be aware that there are some things that can stop the processing that are easily fixed, okay? 1-800-621-3362. That's the FEMA helpline, okay? If you have any questions, that's the place to call and they should be able to help you. They can look at your file, they can see what's missing, they can see what's been uploaded. Now, one of the things, how this works is when you get the letter, it's going to tell you that you can upload all the stuff that they're asking for, whether it be the continued rental assistance application or your proof of occupancy or the documents you need if you had a car that needs assistance. You can do that. You can give that to FEMA in several different ways. The letter that you get is going to give you a fax number and a mailing address, which you can send it in either way like that. Or did anybody register through the disasterassistance.gov? Okay, a few of you did. If you didn't, you can still go to disasterassistance.gov, and that's our portal that actually you can set up an account in there, and through that account you can find out what's happening on your individual file at any time. You can also go through that and you can upload the documents that you need right there on that file, on that website. David, have I missed anything you can think of big?
No, I just would like to reinforce that taking pictures. If you want to write this email or web address down, compass82.org. It's a wonderful little program that talks about how the client or the affected can deal with insurance companies in getting back the money that they really deserve because of destroyed furniture and appliances and all that fun stuff. Compass82.org. Okay, it was designed from someone who in New Jersey who was working in a long-term recovery group, as well as a couple of insurance companies, and they designed it. And literally, it's about taking pictures and saving little pieces of things, like a piece of your rug,
right,
so you get levels. And that really makes a big difference in getting back the money from insurance companies. Because I don't know about you, but when I bought my sofa like 11 years ago, I don't have that receipt, right? And I can say I have, oh yeah, I lost my sofa. Like, fine, what was it? Or show me the receipt. And you're like, I don't know. So just reinforce that. It's a wonderful program. Again, compass82.org.
Thank you. And David is with Presbyterian Disaster Services, and he's in here helping us support all of you. The other thing I remember, my sixth thing he cued on: keep receipts. Any disaster-related expense that you have, keep receipts. If you put yourself in a hotel after the flood, and it wasn't just because of an evacuation, then you may be able to submit those receipts for reimbursement. All these different kinds of things, you call and you ask the helpline if you have any questions. Any FEMA decision can be appealed. Okay. My recommendation would be to call the helpline and talk to them about your file before you actually do an appeal, because there may not be a need for one. They may be able to say, oh yeah, I see what you're talking about, let's do a review right now. But if you do need to do an appeal, there's a process, and it outlines that in the letter that you get. Just recognize that every appeal needs to have some very specific information in it. They need to know what the situation is, what's changed. You can't just appeal and say, you didn't give me enough money, I want more, okay? But you can say, I received $5,000 for home repair. I've received 3 contractor estimates, and they are for $10,000, $12,000, $13,000. And then you attach a copy of that estimate. So recognize this is the federal government. We are the stewards of tax dollars, so we do have to do things in a very specific way to be sure that everybody's protected in the big picture. Okay. So an appeal, say what it is that you want, what's changed. So here's my situation, here's what's changed, and here's what my request is. And then appeal with a request so they know when they read that letter what it is that you're actually asking for. Then include at the bottom of it, you're going to need to put, it'll tell you in the letter, I think, your name and your birth date and your FEMA application number, and you need to either have all of these either notarized or include the statement, I hereby declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct on every single one. Okay, and then you can submit it those 3 ways I talked about. You can fax it in, you can mail it in, or you can upload it. Cars. Is there a problem with cars? Anybody had car damage?
Could you please, because as a social worker, I deal with families
okay.
that have that, so I just know
if a car was damaged because of the flood, what they need to do is, first of all, FEMA wants to be sure that each family has 1 working car. Okay, so if they have had 3 cars that work and just 1 doesn't, then there's probably not going to be assistance available. If a car was damaged, what they need to do is they need to be able to provide proof that their car was legal. Okay, so their registration and an insurance saying that they had at least liability. I'm assuming that's the law in Florida. It usually is. The people have to have at least liability insurance, whatever the law mandates here in Florida. Okay, so they need to be able to prove those 2 things, and then they need to have an estimate from a mechanic as to what it's going to cost to replace it, and that estimate should include the statement that this was caused by the flood on such and such date, and then you submit it the same way. If it's for a second car, then they would also need to include a statement, a very reasonable, thought-out statement as to why a second car is needed for that family. Okay, not just we're used to having 2 cars. You know, it's got, I need to go this way to work, she needs to go this way to work, we can't be there at the same time, you know, those kinds of things.
A lot of conflicting stuff going on in the community as far as flood insurance. There's noise out there that there's limits of $28,000 regardless of what the policy is, and then other people are hearing that they're, through their insurance broker, whatever the policy is written for, that's what they're covering. Is that something you can clear up at all? Are you aware of a $28,000 limit?
No, flood insurance is not my program, so I can't speak in detail about it. And I don't know what people are saying. I will be happy to, after this meeting, to look at my resources and see if I can find a specific answer. I do know that, are you talking about paying out a flood insurance claim or getting new flood insurance?
Insurance policy. A lot of the perception out there is that FEMA's capping that limit for payment at $28,000.
Okay.
As opposed to what if the policy is written for $300,000, they're saying that FEMA's capping
Okay.
it at $28,000.
So and this may or may not be the case, all right? But I do know that if an area, if a home has been flooded and it's in a special flood hazard area, floodplain, and they receive FEMA assistance, that FEMA may provide a group policy plan for them. Okay, and they'll pay the premiums for 3 years. This comes out of your program cap. That policy is up to the maximum grant that was on that particular operation. And that grant max changes every year with the consumer price index, okay? So it could be that policy they got several years ago under another disaster and that was the maximum at that time. I don't know. Now, so every applicant, and that's important to know that program is not going to cover everything. It is also, though, applicants they can certainly cancel that policy and go ahead and get their own policy. They can do up to, I think, $250,000 for flood insurance policies if you want to choose that and pay your payment.
So if somebody goes to an insurance broker and buys a flood insurance policy, that has nothing to do with FEMA, is that right?
Well, FEMA funds that program. That's our main connection with the National Flood Insurance Program, is that we fund it. And then that we can buy those group policies after a home has been flooded and they're in a special flood area, okay?
As I said, there's a lot of confusion out there.
Piggyback question for that. People who had purchased flood insurance for their home, then the policy got sold to another insurance agency, and then it got sold again, and somewhere along that line, flood insurance has fallen off, and they just found out that they no longer had flood insurance.
Okay, I think I know what you're talking about. If a home is in a special flood hazard area, floodplain, they're damaged by a flood, they are required by FEMA to maintain flood insurance as a condition of receiving assistance, okay? That requirement remains on that property for the life of that property. Not the person who lives in it, but the property. So every time if that is sold, if the home is sold or whatever, then that requirement it's up to that seller to tell that purchaser that this is a requirement for this property. So if it falls off at some point, man, I'm not sure what I would be doing on that one. You know, we do have some legal services that may be available, because it's not that if the applicant didn't know, that's too far in the weeds for me. I'm sorry. As far as that, I would be talking to the insurance agency. There's also an NFIP helpline, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I do have it in my bag that I can get it to you. Okay.
I would also suggest that person reach out to Jacksonville Area Legal Aid, because I know that Legal Aid has been doing some work in that area, in helping people in similar situations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can.
You mentioned, Chrissy, that there's a 30,000 cap. Is that per individual, correct?
For family.
Now, one of the things also, right, is if they have flood insurance, but now they're not able to meet that deductible, can that be taken care of by FEMA, or is that?
FEMA doesn't pay deductibles.
The deductible, FEMA doesn't pay for it, but the SBA can roll it into our loan. So we said, oh, FEMA paid my deductible, it's really actually coming out of their loan from the SBA. So that's where it's but we are able to support through the low interest deductible loans. As well as the insurance companies, some people may be still negotiating with their insurance company and FEMA has said that it is to offer them. It is not for the SBA. The SBA can go in and actually give them the money to start their loan process, give them the cash they need to start their recovery while they are still negotiating with their insurance company. We will take an assignment on that account and we'll go to pay their loan.
I cannot remember what our maximum is it 33 or 30?
What is the deductible? That's how we work it out. So that way we can support, well, they have to wait because that is grant money. Because grant money does not need to be paid back versus the SBA is a loan and it does need to be paid back. But that's again where our partnership comes into play. So it is a resource for them.
Thank you. I think there was a question over here first. Is that still there? No? Okay. Yes, here it is.
Okay, so the question I have is for families that do have the flood insurance, and is there, because some of the things that I'm hearing is that the flood insurance is not covering everything.
Right.
And I understand like outbuildings and fences and things like that.
Right.
Like one specific example was the AC unit where like flood water was sucked up and it, you know, so the insurance is saying we're not going to pay for the air handler, we're not going to pay for, you know, the things because it wasn't in their mind directly impacted by flood water, but like the AC people when they're looking at it are saying, no, this, you know, because this was flooded, the flood water did get up and, you know, now you're dispersing bacteria laden, you know,
Okay,
water
right.
through your ductwork and whatnot.
And-
So how does that, so the general question is, even for people who have insurance, the things that are not being covered by their insurance companies that are still in need, can they then file? to
Okay,
FEMA for
good. That's a good question. As far as the actual, you know, what the adjusters on the insurance found out, that's not something, you know, that we do. That's the insurance adjuster. But the flood insurance program does not cover everything. And if there are things, again, remember, safe, sanitary, and functional home is what we're looking at. And that does include things like wells and septic because those are required to have a safe, sanitary, and functional home. If something that FEMA does provide is not covered in your policy, then they may be able to get assistance. It's certainly worth sending it through. And what they would need to do is send that letter, that proof of loss that they have received from the insurance company to FEMA and let them look at it with an appeal letter and requesting the specific thing that they're requesting.
I spoke privately, but you said you had to have flood insurance for the life of the property. Now, what happens if you have the home torn down and now it's just a piece of land? You still have to?
That's not, yeah, I don't, and again, I'm not going to answer specific flood insurance, but what are you insuring?
I live in my family home. I rent it from my mother that's disabled, no longer lives there. She had flood insurance 30 years. Transferred her insurance to her new insurance company. They did not transfer her flood, and she's had it for 30 plus years. They were working on that problem growing up, but she was trying to get the SBA loan. They said that she does not make enough income. She's on disability, and then she collects my rent. They told her to go get a grant, but they didn't tell her how to get a grant. And
Okay, I'm not sure what grant they're talking about. Has she registered with FEMA?
yes,
Okay, there's two things. Is she living in the home with you right now? Then you are the one who would register with FEMA.
but
As,
she put me on the deed after.
but you would have been a renter before, right?
Yes.
And she did not live in the home.
No.
Okay, so you would be registering with FEMA as a renter.
Yes, I did register.
Now, she can, if that rental property, and correct me if I'm wrong, ma'am, if that was her rental property source of income, then she may be able to apply for an SBA loan for a business.
She did, and they denied her.
Okay, because of lack of ability to pay.
Yes.
Okay, that one, I don't know where to go from there on that one.
Well, then what would happen is with her, we'll deny her for under the business. So that part of it pretty much is done. There is no grants for businesses as far as rental. But then you may be able to go back. I'm not sure, you know, on support. I might actually be able to sign as a co-signer. That might be an option as well for her on the loan. So we might be able to do it as a loan that way. There are options that way, but as far as her income, there's nothing more to get.
Okay.
But I could assign the SBA as kind of
Okay.
a home itself.
As a homeowner?
it's not.
Did she put you on the deed? We'll talk later.
You're actually right on time.
Okay.
So the Q&A goes till 9:10. So any other last questions?
Yeah.
You may have covered this already.
Two more.
But it's based on Department of Labor Consumer Price Index. Is that on the website anywhere?
The question I have, there's a lot of issues with things that are not covered and is clearly stated under FEMA, like docks, for example. But my specific question is for those people who had like everybody's dock end up on their property because of the way the surge water went. Is there any assistance for them? Because if like sometimes it's not even their stuff, and now they're because of the surge water, they have all this debris that has come up on their property that it doesn't even belong to them. So I don't know what to tell them about that stuff because there's no assistance.
I can't think of anything right now unless it completely blocks access to the home.
So they're just responsible for paying.
And talk to your local officials, because most of this, the cleanup stuff comes down to the county, local jurisdictions are the ones who are ultimately responsible for that. So and they aren't going to probably work on personal property. So hopefully they've been putting together some kind of plan in place to address these issues as they come up. That's not something that comes under our purview. I'm sorry. One more question.
Is someone else going to talk about nonprofits and how we apply?
If you want to apply, what you need to do for a nonprofit agency, certain nonprofit agencies who provide essential services, and there's a limited definition, may be able to, if their buildings were affected by the hurricane, then they may be able to apply under the public assistance program. The way you get that started is you talk to the local county emergency manager. All of those kind of grants, they go through that, and then what happens is the FEMA will come out, public assistance, which is the other side of the house from me, will come out and they do what they call kickoff meetings and explain that whole process to you, help you decide whether or not you may be eligible.
Okay, so I could apply through that. This is the first I've heard that I need to talk to who accounting.
Well, if you've already applied, you may be able to do it separately, but that's usually a good the avenue that can help you do that. So that's.
And if I have more questions about that, because I applied, it went to Neverland, and I'm not.
Talk to the emergency manager, because everything in a county has to go through that channel, through the government channel. Okay. One more.
Okay. I came over to help the Red Cross in Jacksonville from the Panhandle. When I got here, I found that I had my own damage from the hurricane because I have a home over there and a home here. I just had an adjuster come out last Saturday, so I don't even know the outcome of the adjuster, the insurance. But I went ahead and applied through FEMA just to be safe.
Sure.
So I haven't done anything with FEMA other than apply, and they sent me emails because that's how I asked for correspondence. Should I be okay in that regard?
If you've got insurance and the insurance was denied or is not sufficient, then you need to send in that documentation. Otherwise, if you have questions, call the helpline, because if you had insurance, that's pretty much going to stop it unless it doesn't cover the damage. And if it's a second home, you said you have two homes, the second home, they're only going to be able to assist with the primary home, where you spend more than 6 months out of the year. Okay?
All right, so can I make a suggestion? That when the meeting's over, Christy, if you could just meet with a group
Okay.
In the back there.
All right.
All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
Give Christy a big hand.